I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. Today I have with me Loyal Wooldridge, Regional District Chair last year for 2023.
Last year, yeah.
Right?
No
Not
longer.
the chair anymore, but he's still on the board though, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And then so we've got the 2023 report and we're going to kind of review it because I don't think a lot of people know what the Regional District does or
what it
what
even is.
Yeah, what it is and what it kind of like encompasses, right? So one of the big things for sure, it kind of encircles like the Central Okanagan kind of thing, right? Isn't that Central Okanagan Regional District?
Yeah, high level regional districts are unique to British Columbia. They are federations of municipalities, unincorporated areas, and in our case, also West Bank First Nation. So the whole concept is almost to be like a service broker, if you will, to bring together communities so that you can share in the cost of services, making it more achievable to deliver them.
Yeah, and some of the things that some people run into, landfill, I think, is part on the regional district.
Yeah, solid waste
Dog
management.
licenses.
Yeah.
Parks is a big part of it.
Huge.
And what else kind of falls under the purview of regional district?
Probably the biggest one that we saw last year, which we'll dive into, I'm sure, today, is the Emergency Operations Center.
Right, that's the one that we see all the time when we have fires.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. So it's run by the regional district, and then depending where a certain hazard event is led by that municipality out of the EOC. So that's probably one of the largest services that are offered through regional
So you
districts.
guys are kind of like, you manage the kind of like, CORD manages that emergency response for all the evacuation notices and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And then so you were talking about a little bit, and we're going to jump around a little bit here, a little bit about AI you guys are kind of putting in there too now?
Yeah. So one of our mandates with solid waste management is to obviously reduce the amount of garbage going to landfill, and that's subsidized by an organization called Recycle BC, and that's funded by manufacturers of consumer products like paper and plastics. And so we partnered with a Canadian company called Prairie Robotics out of the East, and they developed an AI technology that's basically a mounted camera on the recycling vehicles that is GPS located, and it scans to see what materials are recyclable and which are not, and then it uses that data to notify the property owner if
so it just throws the trash back in their yard.
No,
the robot just grabs it out.
You get a beautiful little glossy postcard in the mail, like I did, because I have a recycling offender in my household.
There you go.
And basically, it helps us reduce the contamination rates of what goes to, in our case.
So it basically triggers something, and then it creates a photo, and then that gets mailed out to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then hopefully that's an educational process, right?
Yeah. Last year, anecdotally, we've reduced contamination by about 20% just with that small pilot. So super helpful because previously we had summer students going around to blue bins looking
just
through
kind of like sorting through. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Jason, did we put up that map yet? Here it comes. So the population of the RDCO is basically 220, like almost 250,000 people.
Yeah, almost 250,000. And that was census 2021, so I'm assuming it's probably a little bit higher now.
Probably
because we're seeing exponential growth here, the fastest central metropolitan area in Canada. So that continues to grow. And then the RDCO, the Central Okanagan Regional District, encompasses City of Kelowna, City of West Kelowna, District of Lake Country, District of Peachland, Central Okanagan West, which is kind of northwest side where we saw fires last year, and then Central Okanagan East, which is Joe Rich, Ellison, in those areas.
And then in the north, there's the Nord, right? North Okanagan Regional District, and the south of us.
And south as well, South Okanagan.
Yeah, so there you go, SWORD.
Yeah.
They got the coolest name.
What are they? SORD, I think.
I'm saying SWORD. So that's cool. So parks is a big part of what you do too, right? So parks is kind of like, even in Kelowna, we have quite a few regional parks, regional district parks, right? Mission Greenway.
Yeah, Mission Greenway. We've got up in Black Mountain. We've got the dog park out in North Glenmore. And the regional parks are more natural in nature. Like, you're not going to find them as pristinely.
And stuff like
yeah,
that,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really been used as a way to control urban growth as well. So they're usually larger in format. We manage over 2,100 hectares of parkland throughout the region, and it's a way of also managing that urban sprawl. So they're usually on the more outskirts of the region, but quite large.
Some people don't really know about like the regional district, and there was a movement. I'm going to say a few elections ago. There was about a slate of 4 people that wanted to eliminate the regional district, and they were going to turn it into a public library.
Right.
And they were also going to build canals on Bernard.
Yeah.
They were going to be kind of like what's that? Venice. It was going to be Venice and Kelowna, and the regional district was going to become a huge public library.
I have no idea what silly season brings out in people. It seems like we live it every couple of years.
And they've never heard on online books and stuff like that, right? So they're going to make this monstrosity there. And then the Venice thing was kind of like, that was right after the city of Kelowna spent just, I don't know how many millions of dollars beautifying like the downtown area, right? So it seemed odd, but they didn't win.
They didn't win. And a lot of it is just that people don't understand what the regional district does and the costs that would be incurred, especially in smaller rural communities if it was eliminated.
So it is kind of the local government for the areas like Joe Rich and stuff like that too, right? So outside the city of Kelowna boundaries, that is the regional district's kind of purview, right?
Yeah, so those directors are elected to the board, whereas in our case with the city of Kelowna, we're elected to Kelowna and then appointed.
Right. So if we put up the directors on there, and it kind of has representation from different areas of local government, right?
Exactly. And West Bank First Nation as well.
Right. So, and you were the chair last year. And the chair right now is?
Is Blair Ireland. He's the mayor of Lake Country. And it's the first time in I don't know how many decades that someone outside of the city of Kelowna has been the chair.
Look at that. City of Kelowna give up some control.
Right? Unheard of these days.
Well, there you go.
Collaboration.
So that's, the parks is a big thing. A lot of people really enjoy the parks for sure. I think a lot of people use them. Is the mountain there, and I don't know how I'm losing that. Knox Mountain, that's not a regional park, that's a city park, right? That's city park, right? So, and most of the lake parks are all city of Kelowna as well.
For the most part, yeah. There are some, I think on the west side actually, that are RDCO.
And the landfill is a big thing, like for a major growing city too, right? So managing that landfill, I mean, I've been here about 25 plus years now. You kind of see the differences of how the landfill is managed now and how it was managed early on too, right? So,
yeah, and it's our landfill is unique because the city of Kelowna actually owns it and manages it, but it's a regional landfill, so it services the region. So it's a little bit of an anomaly because oftentimes it's owned and managed by a regional district, but in our case here, located in the city of Kelowna, managed by city of Kelowna staff. But it's a regional district service in terms of how it's built.
Okay, so there's just money that kind of flows back and forth probably, right?
Yeah.
So, and then dog licenses, a big thing, right? I remember seeing a regional district sign that actually was talking to the dogs, right? Like if you're not going to pick up my...
Probably the most contentious service is dog licensing. I never knew that until I got into this work, but...
No cat licenses yet?
Not yet. That does... That
I mean, Warren in Edmonton, they were going to bring in cat licenses. This is a long time ago, I'm dating myself. They actually, one of the councillors got up and threw water in the face of one of the other ones because she did not want the cats to be licensed.
I got a request for bunnies once.
Bunnies, wow.
Yeah, all sorts of things. So
the city of Kelowna's got a little muddy history with the bunnies. You remember that?
I remember that. There are still some geriatric bunnies that are in hospice care from those days.
Oh yeah,
managed by an organization called Trax.
Yeah. So you got some highlights in there too that we can touch on.
Yeah.
You even used your highlighter.
I did use a highlighter and I printed it. So that's in front of us. Obviously going to go into the fires.
Let's do the fires because that's the big one for most people, right? Like wildfires is a big thing. Mitigation, is that part of the regional district's responsibilities, or?
So partially. The province actually just changed the Emergency Management Act last year, which has now put a big emphasis on both preparation and recovery. Before it was really heavy weighted on response, because obviously that's the sexy stuff that we see coming from the skies. But really, and I had the opportunity to go up in the helicopter and see the devastation from the McDougall Creek wildfire last year, and you could see the properties that had done preparation through the Fire Smart program and removed combustibles from around their homes and those that hadn't.
It's just common sense, right?
It is, but I do have empathy for a lot of folks that live on large properties in rural areas, right? Because they're surrounded by Crown land. And, the air quality lobby has been quite strong for quite some time, and we've shied away from traditional burns that Indigenous people have used for thousands of years to control this type of fire behavior. And so there's just been a lot of fuel that's left on the forest floor that just ignites.
And we did see that in Jasper just recently too. And then there's a scathing report or story that came out of the Toronto Star of the mayor asking for, some mitigation and not getting it. And then, they lose 300 plus homes, right? Or structures, I should say, not all homes, but.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and Logan Lake did a great job years ago about protecting the circumference of Logan Lake, not only through, removing fuel, but also having large sprinklers set up around it. In this case, that wouldn't have helped. But again, it's those Fire Smart initiatives that everyone can take on their homes.
And then I think we had Doug in here, and the city manager, and saying like, like the work that we did in the Knox Mountain area really helped when that fire jumped the lake and not causing a lot of damage on this side.
Exactly. Yeah, and it burned probably our most high-risk area that we hadn't been able to fire smart yet, because there's about 163 million distributed province-wide annually in grants for fire smarting, and you can only get to so much. So when it crossed the lake last year, it hit probably our highest risk area, which is what we saw go up so quickly.
Right. So the people turn to the regional district when evacuation notices and all that kind of stuff, and you guys have had a lot of practice at that now since 2000, the big fire in 03. Mm-hmm. How has that kind of matured, and how has that kind of that response been? Getting the information out to the people and, getting them back into their homes as quick as possible as well.
Yeah. So the Emergency Operations Center, like I mentioned earlier, it's a staff-led organization. So it's apolitical. We aren't, politicians aren't invited in there for good reason. And basically it's fully tactical, and we have subject matter experts in there, both from fire and floods, but also GIS mapping and purchasing and communications. And it runs 24/7 when it's activated. And those are all staff from partner municipalities and First Nations that are embedded in there to provide information, but also partner with our provincial and federal partners when it comes to BC Wildfire, et cetera, for response. So that we have had a lot of practice with it, but what has changed is that we've gone from wildfire season to hazard season, because now we're seeing a flooding season, and we're seeing a landslide season, we're seeing heat domes, and we're seeing atmospheric rivers. And so the pressure on emergency response has heightened quite a lot. And so one of our priorities on the board is to see that to be a year-round service, because what we do is we take staff that work a regular day job and then put them 24/7 in an EOC and expect them to do their same amount of work. And
are you using any more technology or AI in that respect, and communicating with the evacuees, like tracking them and texting and all that kind of stuff?
So province is working on a more digital notification aspect. What we have to be careful about is it's a very obviously sensitive release of information. And so right now we have the ability to do more of a blanket release, but when you're evacuating certain neighborhoods or certain geographic areas, we have to make sure that it's very precise. Right. We're also starting to see some emergence of AI in terms of predicting and notifying about fire when it starts.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few companies recently, and they're doing some really cool technology. There's that partnership there in Predator Ridge where they're using cameras and sensors. And then I did an interview with Genesis AI, and they're doing more satellite mapping and showing high-risk areas, right, with the satellite mapping. They're going to have a report out in August.
Oh, amazing.
So they're going to come back in and show us the high-risk areas around the Okanagan.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, because these events are becoming more erratic and more intense.
Well, I mean, with the hotter climates for sure, and the climate change, and obviously we have to figure out a way to deal with it too, right? We can't just just stand at the podium and talk about climate change. We have to figure out, okay, so what do we do now?
Totally.
Right? What are the responses, and how do we put it out faster, but how do we stop them from happening more so, right? Like how do we control them, mitigate them, and stuff like that, right?
Which is that preparation piece that we're really going to be focusing on moving forward. I remember last year, because of course with the news ban, which was a challenge last year, getting news out, people were saying, why didn't you tell us to be prepared in May? And someone commented and copied a post I'd made to me and said, well, actually it happened. And, when it comes to emergencies, people are only conscious of it when it's starting to affect them. But it's something that every household just neneeds to be
You'd think that
of.
the Meta and the federal government would, at least during part of an emergency, just like, okay, we're just going to take it off for this period of time.
It would have been helpful.
Stop the fight, right?
It would have been helpful, because I could only copy and paste those news releases to my social accounts so quickly.
Yeah, just stop the fight just for a bit, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Take a break.
Exactly.
Obviously, fire is a big thing for the Okanagan, right? Because it affects our tourism. It affects people's homes. Obviously, it affects the air quality. Such a big issue, and I've been kind of beating this drum, is like we need to really put a lot of energy and money towards like wildfire mitigation,
100%.
or how do we because deciduous trees have a tough time burning, right? So maybe even having people look at replacing trees in their yards and stuff like that with more deciduous trees, so we have a bit of a protection around our homes, right? Because losing your home, it's not just your home you're losing all your, like lots of times all the memories in there because you're leaving in minutes, right? Lots of times, right? You're not getting a lot of preparation time. Right?
Yeah, the biggest thing people can do, and we scream this from the rafters all the time, is get rid of those cedars and junipers. They're lovely on the West Coast when it's raining, but here it's literally kindling up against people's houses and it burns like that. Straw mats as well. We learned
lots of different things, right? That become just like sparks. I have seen some stuff for insurance companies. They're starting to send out letters and saying like, they'll even come out and help you clean your areas up. Yeah. So what that tells me is they're probably going to get to the point like, if you don't have this cleaned up, you don't get insurance, right? Yeah. So like,
I got one of those letters too.
You got one of those. Yeah. There you go. So I think they're trying to do it as a complimentary thing this year. They're saying, hey, we're going to come and take a look at your property, and if there's a fire in your area, we're going to come and check it again. But I think, like with what I've heard from Genesis say, they're going to actually have, the insurance companies are going to have access to these maps, and they're going to say, hey, you got 20 trees hanging over your house. That's a bad idea, right? So you're a high risk, right? So I actually installed sprinklers on my roof. Yeah, I mean,
so those are things you can do.
Yeah, some people still have cedar shingles and pine trees hanging over their homes too, right? So anything we can do to mitigate is probably the answer. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So other than wildfires for the regional district, which is a lot of the park stuff, what other services does the regional district kind of look after?
Well, there's another subset to the regional district called the regional hospital district, and not a lot of people actually know what even is. When I was first elected, I was assigned to that board. I'm like, what does this even do? And you'll see on your property tax, hospital tax, and that actually funds the regional hospital district, and we fund up to 40% of capital projects within the health authority and partner with Interior Health on those. So it gives a little bit of a local input to the health authority around priorities here. We just a couple weeks ago announced the replacement of cottonwoods. So that's been an ongoing discussion, replacing every single bed with a single unit with bathroom and childcare, and so that's another important aspect of.
Well, that makes sense because this hospital serves not only the city of Kelowna, it serves Peachland and Lake Country and all those areas around.
And the health services around as well, whether that's urgent primary care centers in West Kelowna or we just opened one in Rutland. So that's another aspect that not a lot of people are aware exists.
I mean, there's so much to healthcare as well. I mean, we have an overtax system and a growing population. Right,
especially a growing aging population, which is kind of a tsunami that we're going to be seeing, especially in long-term care.
Are there any plans to do big expansions on this hospital? Because it seems like it's like every time you go in there, there's a lot of people in the hallways.
Yeah, I can't speak to the expansion of KGH per se. I know that different units are being looked at right now, but I can't really speak to specifically what is next on the docket because we see a lot coming through KGH in terms of upgrades and pharmacy expansions, et cetera.
So environment and climate is another area of one of the responsibilities.
Yeah.
And maybe give me a kind of like an overview of what that responsibility is.
Yeah, and environment and climate kind of intersects a lot of the other services, whether that's park services or solid waste management or emergency preparedness. So climate kind of touches all of that. And also truth and reconciliation touches climate. And so one of the biggest impacts that we can have through a regional district is securing as much land for our parks, which are preserved and creates natural environments for, obviously, for wildlife and for people to enjoy natural outdoors. And then partnering with our municipalities on transportation. And so we flow BC Transit as one of the services that we have input on through the regional district, though it's administered individually through each municipality, and looking at how we can get around the region in a more progressive way. We've also been doing more land use planning around employment lands, and to really create an inventory around where we can best plan so that people can live near where they work, because transportation is the biggest.
Yeah, because I mean, we are limited by that bridge. That is our choke point for sure, right?
Yeah.
That bridge is a huge choke point.
And the lights coming off the bridge.
Having 6 intersections right within 3 blocks of that bridge is another more choke points where I think as the city grows, you might be closing off some of those, but. It's still a big choke point for traffic for sure. And then how do you move that much traffic as the city grows, right? 500,000 people, or sorry, 250,000 people And escalating quickly, though, right? So,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people move to the outlying communities, like West Kelowna, and in the areas like Glen Rosa and different things,
Yeah.
and Peachland, because it's a little bit cheaper than the city of Kelowna proper.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, that bridge traffic becomes.
Well, and 85% of the traffic on the bridge is destined for Kelowna.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks say, well, have a bypass and a second crossing, and then our congestion will be mitigated. It won't be because most people are coming to town.
Yeah, you can see it in the timing, right? Like in the morning and the afternoon, right? That's when the congestion happens, right?
Yeah. So this bridge is engineered for a center bus rapid transit lane, and so that's one of our number one priorities is to get a new transit yard built so that we can build rapid
Are you
transit.
on Gord Lovegrove's train?
Well, I would love to see light rail at some point, but I think we have to probably start with the more dense areas.
Are you going to bet on Elon Musk's robotaxi?
Oh my gosh, I am not going down this train. The mayor will not be pleased. Sorry, Tom.
There you go. There is some technology in the future that can mitigate some of that stuff too, whether that is a robotaxi or a train or light rail or what have you, or electric or hydrogen buses for that matter. I don't believe in hydrogen, but hey.
Well, in the new Clement extension, Highway 33, we're veering off regional district, but the Clement extension is visioned to be multimodal. So hopefully we could see a rapid transit.
That rail trail could be used for something, right? So because of that, that was a smart purchase way back.
100%.
When too, right? So
yeah.
Transportation, and obviously one of the biggest things that many people in the city and the regional district focus on is housing.
Yeah.
Does the regional district have any kind of influence on housing and what gets built?
So each community has their own official community plans, and we aren't overarching their own policy. But we have a regional growth strategy where we bring all the communities together to best understand how they're planning it. So it's not a stick that comes down and say, thou must do this, but it's saying, okay, where are you projecting your growth? How do we best plan for this regionally? And that's through the regional growth strategy led by staff, and that reports back to the regional district. But it's crucially important because of our transportation network. If Lake Country were to build a ton of homes on our border, that's obviously going to impact our road systems as well. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we have those dialogues and those plans so that we can best manage that into the future.
And then the university and the airport that's out there, and that's City of Kelowna. Well, the UBC, it's own private property, right? But the airport is a city property.
It is, and I'm so proud of YLW because I really see that as an economic hub. Another one of our priorities is hopefully, building out the east side lands of the airport, which could really unlock a lot of logistics and distribution, especially for the agricultural industry.
So putting more like UPSs and different
exactly
FedEx and that stuff.
I'm not sure how they want to program it, but unlocking those lands would open up a lot of employment.
So putting the planes on that side probably too, right? Like
possibly.
Lots of airports are like that commercial. I mean, they're pedestrian or passenger traffic on one side, and then the parcel stuff on the other.
I mean,
side.
we're constrained by mountains, so it's we can only grow so much there. But I'm really proud of UBCO and YLW in that area because I think there's a lot of opportunity as an economic generator.
Major growth in that area in the past 10 years.
Totally,
it's just been amazing, right?
With
what Flightcraft did out there as well,
and the innovation drive that UBC. I was just out there yesterday with some of the innovation they're coming out with in terms of carbon capture and pocket batteries yesterday I learned about.
There you go. I think we were out there. I think Kent and Nick were out there, did that story on the batteries, right? And electrification of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else you want to touch on here?
Oh, what else? Probably my proudest moment was advancing truth and reconciliation with WFN. Right now, they have a member that sits around the table that's non-voting. And we've really been working to collaborate with West Bank First Nation of actually having true representation around the table, because a vast majority of people that live in Central Okanagan West actually live on WFN lands, and the more that we can have those collaborative conversations, the better. The board took a bold move and redistributed $6 million of Community Works funds to WFN because it's allocated by population,
right?
And those people live there, so they made the right choice to move $6 million over to WFN to build infrastructure. So
there's been some great growth on the west side of the lake too, and a lot of that's on WFN land too, right? Like even all those big box stores and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Right? And housing and those different aspects. So, the more that we can work together with truth and reconciliation, it helps both communities with some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, they're doing a big development. Westridge is doing one right on the lake, and that's in WFN land too, right?
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what was really amazing last year, back to the fire, is it was one of the first years that we had First Nations embedded in the emergency response. And while the fire was cresting over a hill, and the BC Wildfires saying, we don't know how to get down there, because we had a First Nations representative in the room, they said, hey, my grandfather knows those trails, knows how to get down there, and was able to help guide some of the firefighting. So
you're a busy guy.
Couple things going on.
You were the chair of the regional district. Now you're a board member.
Yeah.
But you're also a city Kelowna councillor.
Yeah.
Second term. And then now you've put your hat in the ring for. Yeah. You're going to run for an MLA.
Yeah.
Right.
Running provincially in the.
We won't get into politics on that in this show.
Yeah.
But I mean that makes you pretty busy though, right?
It does. Yeah. And that's why I chose this spring to step aside as chair.
Yeah. That makes sense, right? Because you've got a lot of focuses on your plate, right? So, I mean, there's a lot going on in the city of Kelowna and the regional district as well, right? I mean, so I guess that makes sense in the regional district and in the city of Kelowna having councillors and that representatives sit on that board as well, because obviously you're making policy and legislation and bylaws and that affect the region, right?
And we fund, like, City of Kelowna funds almost 70% of the regional district, so that's...
Yeah, we can talk about the money if you want. Right here at the back, financial statements. Anybody can go online, and you can go to the regional district website, and you can download this report, as well as many of the other reports from prior years, right? Mm-hmm. So you guys control a significant budget, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah. What's unique about our budget is that every service has its own budget.
Yeah.
So with the City of Kelowna, you can kind of move funds around as needed.
Right.
With the regional district, that's not the case, because everyone contributes at a different level. Some don't participate, some do. And so you can't borrow from Peter to pay Paul in this instance. And there's also legislative, what's the term I'm looking for? Savings accounts. What are those called?
Like trust accounts?
No. I've lost the word. Reserves.
Oh, there you go.
Came back to me.
There you go.
Yeah, legislative reserves, like
closing. And I'm an accountant. I didn't know what you're talking
about. Like closing the landfill, for example, we're mandated provincially that we have to be collecting funds every single year for
a reclamation fund, kind of like to reclaim that land after,
for 100 years after it closes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what mines have to do and all that kind of stuff, and mills and all of them, they have to set aside those funds, right? So that, they because in the past, sometimes those mines would close up and say, well, we're done.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And who's going to clean up this mess? Well, not us.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why they make people put aside funds. And a fairly substantial budget, but not as big as the city of Kelowna's, obviously. Yeah. But and then a lot of the revenue is driven by, like, licensing for dogs and, where's the bulk of the revenue coming from, I guess?
Well, user fees are one of those. We seek to have cost recovery for the most part, but then it's the member municipalities that
put in some of the money, in the city of Kelowna put in almost $15 million,
almost $15
right?
million, yeah.
And it's kind of proportional then, because West Kelowna, like 3.3 or something like that, right? Yeah,
exactly.
There you go. So,
and then our representation on the board is based on
kind of fits
population.
With that, right? So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's all representative of that, and then how much control on the board do you have over the budgeting? Is that where you guys kind of set some of the policy on the budgeting, or is that the city presents a budget to you? And not the city, sorry, the staff.
So staff will go through our priorities with us to know kind of, hey board, what are your priorities right now? Right. What do you want to dial up, dial back? One of the initiatives of this board early on in 2022 was doing value for money audits of individual services. So obviously that's a mammoth task when you have almost 80 services to go through. So every single year we're prioritizing based on performance value for money to say, like, hey, is this meeting the needs of our community right now? Is this still something we want to be involved in, or is it something we want to dial up, dial back? And then staff come forward with recommendations. And the budget process starts in December and it ends, I think we finally adopted in April or so. So it's quite lengthy. It goes through a lot of iterations. And so that's kind of how that's developed.
When are we going to loop the lakefront with Mission Creek Greenway, and then all the way tied back to the rail trail? We just have little pieces left to do.
That would be
What a great
awesome.
loop, right?
That would be an amazing loop.
So we have a few pieces that are mostly done, I think, from Waterfront Park,
And then we just
all the way up to the city bridge, I think, a little bit past, and then there's probably
Yeah.
some houses you got to deal with there.
Yeah.
And then I think it starts again around Gyro Beach or something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Rotary or Gyro, and then you can kind of go all the way, and then you can connect to the Greenway, and you can walk all the way
kind
up
of city into the regional parks. Yeah.
and you can get all the way up to like Ziprick there.
Yeah.
And now you just need a little bit of a bridge across Ziprick there, and then you connect to the rail trail, and you're all the way back to the water.
Exactly. Yeah. City connecting to regional.
And there's a little mandate for you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've done this. You've said that what you've accomplished there. That's one of the things that you're proud of. And in the city of Kelowna, obviously, too, you guys have a mandate, and then you've gone on to some bigger stuff. Maybe we'll come back one day and we'll talk about when you decide what you're doing with the city, like what you're doing with the city, and if you move on from the city, then we can talk about what you accomplished there.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I love local government because it's closest to the people and it delivers services that we all use every single day. And sometimes it's underestimated because we take it.
And you've been in this community for quite a while now too, right?
Yeah, 1993. So
1993,
very long
yeah.
time.
So, and then a businessman,
Yeah.
and in this community as well, and now representing the city.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you've been watching KelownaNow with Jim Check and with our guest today, Loyal Wooldridge.
Thank you.